Hello, good evening. This is your host, Kunzekweguta, here on Self TV. I am so excited to have my best friend here, Thom. We are going to be talking about how she managed to face loss head on. Yes, it's something that is like something that came from pain, something that came from hurting, something that came from losing loved ones. That's not what I'm excited about. But I'm excited about having her on this program so that she will tell us about life lessons that she picked from her journey. So here on South TV, stories that heal with Kunzekweguta. Jennifer, my friend, could you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you, Monica. I am so honored to be on your show. I love your beautiful smile and sharing all these stories that heal. I believe that when we share stories, when we can share our thoughts, we help each other. And that is the process of healing. So my name is Jennifer Thom, and I'm a funeral director, and I help families who are going through grief. And today I'm just excited to share my story. I'm just like you, and everybody else. But that's why I love this show about sharing stories that heal, because we all have a story. And today I'm going to share my story, Monica.
Fantastic. I was just thinking about it earlier today. Do you know that it's almost a year since we had the Women Talk, which is where I heard you share your story, and oh my God, I had goosebumps when I heard you share that story. So today we have more time. I want you to tell our viewers how did you decide to become a funeral director? You're someone who's coming from Kenya, African, and then you come to Canada. Of all the jobs and the businesses that one could do, you decide to say, you know what, let me make sure that I give you a final send-off. How did you get there? Because these are not careers that people think about. How did you get there?
That is, I like the way, I'll tell you why I became a funeral director, and I had to read. So I read this somewhere, and that's why I became a funeral director. So this is how it goes. And it was something that was written somewhere, and you'll get it at the end, because this is the man in the house, and you can all relate. And this man is in the house, and he tells his wife, I'm the man of this home. So starting tomorrow, I want you to have a hot, delicious meal ready for me. And second, I want you to walk through the door, to walk through that door. Afterwards, well, I am watching Netflix and relaxing in my chair. You'll bring me my slippers and then run my bath. And when I'm done with my bath, guess who is going to dress and comb my hair? And the wife responds, the funeral director.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh my goodness. That's so funny. I wasn't expecting that.
I love it so much because as a funeral director, we have a good sense of humor. But anyway, when I read that, I said I have to be a funeral director. But anyway, I just had to share that joke. But on the other side of a serious note, the real reason I became a funeral director is that let me start. I was born in Kenya. And on a Christmas day, when our family was gathered and we're all having a good time, enjoying the celebration, telling jokes and laughing, we were all just having a good time. And at the end of that function, some of my relatives traveled to go to their home. And there was a big accident. And we lost several of my relatives on a car accident on a Christmas day. I have to tell you, my friends, that changed our lives forever. That changed not only because we lost so many relatives, but our family was divided. There was a lot of blame. There was a lot of building wall of silence, which I'll talk about, because it was so painful for everybody. So everybody did not talk about the incident. Everybody did not talk about the accident. We just went ahead and did the funerals and grieved and cried on our own. But the thing is, the reason we did not talk about it, it was too painful to talk. Now that I'm a funeral director, I understand that we did not talk, or we all kept quiet and grieved on our own because it was so painful. And from that day, I have made it a mission to share my story so that we don't build those walls, so that families don't become so disconnected, so that we can feel free to share the pain. Because when we share, we heal. And
how many people were involved from one family?
from our family, there was approximately 13 family members. And it took a toll. Since then, we gather all of us on Christmas Day. It really affected our family. Fast forwarding, after that, my dad, who was the breadwinner, and he was everything to us. He was my dad. Loved him so much. And very sudden, he had a stroke. He was taken to hospital and he didn't make it. And he died. And that was another loss. So throughout my life, I've had these losses that I had questions. I had questions about death. I had questions about death and dying, and I had so many questions about loss. I did not understand. Again, so every event that happened in my life in loss, it's like it piled. I needed to learn. I had more questions. Every loss that happened, it piled up and piled up. To fast forward, because I know we don't have the whole day to talk, because I really want to talk about other things. To fast forward, I had very close friends, and he was my first boyfriend. And we decided to travel the world because I shared my story. I shared my dad, my breadwinner. He was gone. I just needed to do something different. And so we decided to tour the world. We decided to be adventurous. But because we were young and silly and thought the world is small, I mean, it's not as, we didn't look at it as a big world. I started doing my own research and answering my own questions. And I have to tell you that I came across a book written by Brendan Burchard. It is called The Charged Life. It's called The Charged. I've forgotten the title of the book. It is one of my life-changer book that I read. The Charged Life, yes. And this book talks about it talked about we have three kinds of lives. And the first life that's there is the caged life. And when he talked about the cage, it's like when you're in a cage, you ask yourself, will I survive? We focus on the hurt. We focus on being safe. And as I read that book, I realized I was in that cage. And it's because I had all these questions, I had this pain, I had this wall built, the wall of silence where I didn't talk about the losses. And as I read this book, it started opening my eyes. The other kind of life he talks about is called the comfortable life. And the comfortable life is where you ask yourself, will I be accepted? Will I succeed? And you're comfortable. And then there's a third life that's called the charged life, where you live excited, engaged, and despite the problems, you are excited that you'll figure it out. The charged life doesn't mean that you will not have problems. It means you have the belief that you'll figure it out. So that book changed my life. But it said to move from the cage to the comfortable to the charged, two things have to happen. The first thing that has to happen is that something new has to come into your life, or something within you comes into your life. So, for example, at that time of my life, I met this boyfriend, so he was new to me. Right? So it was something new. It's like, let's say our audience out there, maybe you are in a situation and you're going to change. Something could come. You could win a lottery and your life changes today. So that's what they mean when something from outside. The other thing that happened to me, something from within me, where I made the choice that I am done being miserable. I am done building the wall of silence. And now I'm going to make a choice to share my story and figure out my next life. So that's how I ended up in Canada with all these questions and decided to become a funeral director. But I believe it's because I needed to understand my own loss and get the answers. So I became a funeral director.
Wow, this is what they say. They say that your story, sharing your story, or your story is your superpower.
It is.
And actually sharing it, it makes you able to answer certain questions. It
Right.
allows you to heal. It allows you to put certain things into perspective.
Right.
And wow, it looks like that book. How old were you when you came across that book?
Oh, that's a good question. You're going to try and figure out my age now? But I'm going to just mention, I'll tell you my age before the end of our show tonight. But I want to just explain that when I came to Canada, my boyfriend went to the States. And as I was trying to still deal with, we did not come to Canada together. He went to the States and we were separated for, anyway, I'll tell you what happened. He went there and I was here trying to figure out my grief and my losses and my questions. And then one day I got a phone call from a friend and he said, oh, your boyfriend was in a car accident.
Oh my God.
And I said, oh, which hospital did they take him to? And the person on the other phone said, no, he didn't make it. And so back to the cage I went. Remember, I've been trying to figure out my own losses. I've been trying to understand death, life, my dad, my relatives, and now my boyfriend is gone.
Mm.
And that was the more reason now I really needed to be in the funeral industry, be there for people, help people, do whatever it takes, do my studies to understand so that I'm able to help others. And since then, I've never looked back. I have made it a mission to understand, because when we lose a loved one, something is taken out. They're our loved ones. And so that's what I do now. And through my work, I met my husband, and now we both run a funeral home and do this work together. And every day, while we serve families, I still, as we serve them, as we do the funerals, I go back to where I was when I was living in Africa, when I've had all those losses. And when they go home, I always wonder what happens to them. Do they have the questions that I had when I experienced? So with our work that we do today, we it's our mission to help through the grief, through answering those questions. And today I really, before I even go any further, I really want to explain to our friends how important this is, because I know some of us have lost loved ones, some of us have lost health, some of us, we all have had a loss, and we have questions that we don't share. But this is why I came across this poem, and I'm going to read it because I think it's so powerful. It talks about the elephant in the room. And it's a poem by Terry Kettering. And I'll read it. There's an elephant in the room. It is large and squinting, so it is hard to get around. Yet we squeeze it. We squeeze by width. How are you? And I'm fine. And other forms of trivial chatter. We talk about the weather. We talk about work. We talk about everything else except the elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the room. We all know it's there. We are thinking about the elephant as we talk together. It is constantly on our mind. For you see, it is a very large elephant. It has hurt us all. But we don't talk about the elephant in the room. Oh, please say his, her name. Oh, please say his, her name again. Oh, please, let's talk about the elephant in the room. For if we talk about his, her death, perhaps we can talk about his, her life. Can I say his, her name to you and not have you look away? For if I cannot, then you're living alone in a room with an elephant.
So while you are still there, where you're talking about the elephant in the room, I want to know, you mentioned that when you go home, after you had done your traveling and then you are here, obviously I would like to think that maybe you got some counseling, and then through your work, you got some training and understanding what happens. When you left home with all the grief and the loss, the family got divided. How did you use your experience and knowledge to bring the family together, or did you ever manage to bring them together?
That's a good comment. That it's a process, especially with family. It is a process. But I have to tell you, it takes long. Everybody grieves differently. We are all healing differently. So every time I go home, there's some healing. But it's never this, it has never gone back to the same. So when I went back and told my family what I do,
That
that look explains everything.
yes.
But yeah, with time, it's been more than 2 decades. Start counting my age. It's been more than 2 decades. So every time I go, there's healing. But also for me, I understand them.
Mm.
I hear them. But when I was in a cage myself, I didn't understand. But now when I interact with my family, I really get it.
And at the moment, it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter where you come from. At the moment, we are suffering a lot of loss from friends, from family, from people we know, people who know, people that we know. Every day, there is something or somebody that we have met, we have heard about, who is either losing a relative or a family member.
Mhm.
What kind of service do you think should be there? Because you mentioned an elephant in the room.
Mhm.
How can we tackle talking about death, because it is happening and it's something that is actually coming out of our lips every day? Whereas before there was the pandemic,
Mhm.
you would talk about it maybe today and maybe a week or two will go past, and then but now it's in one day you probably talk about it more than 10 times.
Mhm. Mhm. Monica, that's good. And that's why when we started, I really needed to read that poem about Elephant in the Room. What we are doing right now, sharing those stories, is so powerful and
Mhm.
not avoiding the topic. And we've gone a step further where we need to talk about there are things we say, like things that you can things we shouldn't say to someone who is grieving,
Mhm.
right? And I'll talk about that later. We've put it on the book because we know that is so important. Because what happens, let's say you have a friend who's lost a child or a mother, we say sorry and we don't want to talk about it because we're afraid to bring the topic. And sometimes we think we're going to make them sad, or we don't know, we don't want to say the wrong thing, right? We don't want to say the wrong thing. And so
We
we
don't know
avoid,
what to say.
or don't know what to say exactly. But I
Mm.
would encourage everybody, even if you have nothing to say and you're not sure what to say, be there to listen. Be there. Don't leave that elephant in the room. Talk about their loved one. Talk about, mention their name. Because as soon as you mention the name, they'll tell you about their life. And that's how we heal when we talk about our loved ones.
Mhm. I want so your journey from when you started to where you are now. What is going on, and what are the sort of challenges you have been facing in recent times?
Recent times, I believe we're all going through major challenge, and whether we realize it or not, we are all going through grief. there there's so many people who we've lost everybody has lost, we've lost. So for example, us having the kids at home, they're not going to school. Some people have lost their financial, some people have lost their loved one. We are all grieving at this time, and we all know that there are stages of grief. And just to touch briefly about it, like let's talk about even COVID. When it started, we were all in shock. We didn't think it would happen when they said we can't go to the store. It's like, what? That shock is one of the reactions we get when we grieve. We get shocked and we get sad. The
Mhm.
next thing, you get really angry about it. Like, what do you mean I can't go to the store, or I can't go do my hair? All these things that we've lost is a grieving process. There are stages we've gone through. Then we start
Mhm.
again and say, okay, maybe I don't need to go shop in Calgary. I'm gonna go shop in my village. That's the beginning. Then all of a sudden you can't shop at all, or you can't do your nails, right?
happening.
So all these stages that are happening, all the things we're going through today, we're all grieving. But and some sadness can end up into depression. But the thing is to be in intention and being aware that we're all grieving. My grief was the grief of a loved one. Some other people are going through grief of other things, but we are going through the same process. And I was just listening to something today, a podcast, and they were talking about that, about these stages we're going through. And so we started with the denial, anger, sadness, and loss. We bargain, and then we accept that, okay, fine, we're not going to a restaurant. So we accept. But what happens now after that, there's this new, we need to create we create a new life. That's why I love this show about sharing.
Quiet. Okay.
Okay, we create a new, right? And that's the new. When we say that, when we grieve, we need now to talk about our loved one. And that's the new I'm talking about, where we don't leave the elephant in the room, where we talk about them. And that helps with the grieving process. So I'm really excited to show you about the book that I was talking about. Are you still there, Monica?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Yeah. I just want to show you just a quick about the book, because I really think that book was so powerful. It doesn't matter whether you're going through grief of a loved one, grief of what's happening, finances, health. There's 3 kinds of lives. The cage. So I want to show you the cage life. So yeah. This is the cage. We get in here.
Yes.
And when we get in a cage, we are sad. We feel trapped in there. We feel nobody understands us. And we feel angry. I'm sure most of us have been to the zoo and you see the animals in a cage. And they want out. So I don't know, like sometimes you meet people and you say, hey, and they're like, what? They're angry. It means they're in a cage. And most times when you're in a cage, you feel like people don't understand you. And when you're in a cage, most times we don't want to ask for help. Because when we think people don't understand us, we'll not ask for help. I think it's important to know where we are at with this kind, where we are at in the spectrum of this life, like the quality, because it affects the quality of life we live. So we have the cage life. And then we get to the comfortable life where we say, okay, life is good, but there's a tell. When you ask somebody, how is life? They say, it's okay. That's the tell that they're just okay. And there's more to life. Then we get to this charged life where you meet these people. Hey, they're like, hey, life is good. Not life is good, but like they're excited. They've got energy. They're present and they're happy about life. So my encouragement to all of us is to think where we at. We're all grieving in today's world. And as I said again, my grief was loss of a loved one. You could be grieving because of something else. But where you were in these 3 kinds of life really affects the life you live. And I would want all of us to be on the charged life, not in the cage. Like, get out of the cage and let's get to the charged life, because that's where we live fully by being present and having the energy. But the key is that does not mean you don't have many problems. And that does not mean that challenges are not there. It just means you have the belief to figure things out.
It means that's powerful. It means that you are able to manage your emotions.
Hey, that's
You're
good.
able, you're able to respond to things instead of reacting. And so when you are in that state, you are then able to understand others. So as you manage your own feelings, you are able to relate to others. You can be compassionate to them, and you can also help them through their journey. But if everybody is in the cage, everybody is angry, and by the time you come out of there, everybody's bruised because no one is giving each other a chance to walk out of that cage freely.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Very powerful, Monica. And the other thing through I shared about my story is that sometimes I got back to the cage. Like life events happened where I would be out and then I would get back in the cage and out and in back.
And get
So now it's my passion to help people not to get back because it's not a fun place to be. So now we have tools that help us with life events, because life events will happen, but it's how it's being intentional and being aware and knowing that we don't need to be in a cage.
that is awesome. The fact that we now have tools, but apart from, like we might have the tools, but you also mentioned it is indeed an elephant in the room. So having the tools and addressing the elephant are two different things.
Right.
So how do you poke someone and say, hey, with this elephant here, you need to look at these tools so that we deal with grief, we deal with loss. A lot of people don't even know where to start. So where would one start?
That's good. So just to understand, Monica, you mean, let's say someone is grieving, you're asking where do you start as somebody who is helping someone who is grieving? Is that what I'm hearing?
So someone who is starting and they're in there, the elephant is there, you can see, because now you are experienced, which means you know where all these tools are found. But here is someone who is grief-stricken like you were at one point, and they don't even know, apart from counseling, what other tools are there.
Okay.
But also, for you who knows, how do you then say, there is an elephant, can you see it? Let's talk about it.
Right. No, that's so good. That's so good, Monica. Let me tell you something. The biggest thing we can do to help and deal with the elephant is to have listening. Listening is a skill that if you just give someone a chance to talk and ask the right questions and let them talk and share their story, you'll be talking about the elephant in the room. Because I'll tell you, life happens, whether it's a death, diagnosis, loss of a job, and we go through the stages, whether it's shock, denial, bargaining, depression. We go through all that. You just need to, let's say you've gone through one of those, and I just ask you, how are you doing? So if someone is in the cage, just realizing someone is in a cage, how are you doing? They're like, life is terrible. You know for sure they're in a cage, right? Okay, now you've identified that. So you know how to handle someone in a cage. They're angry. Or you'll talk to somebody and say, how is that? It's okay. And so you say, okay, you ask more questions where they are. They're comfortable, but they're aiming for something else, right?
With the question there, I wanted to mention earlier.
No, that's good.
Sometimes you can ask someone, are you okay? And they will say to you, oh yeah, I'm okay. I think sometimes you need to ask again. No, really. Are you okay?
Right.
And when you ask with an emphasis, now you're repeating that question again.
Yeah.
That person then would know that you're now inviting them
Right.
to open up and say, you know what, I'm not really okay,
Right.
but I just don't know what to do. Sometimes when you then ask that question again,
Right.
no, I mean, are you okay?
Yes.
Sometimes they just burst out crying
Yeah.
because people are used to saying, I'm okay, so that they push you away,
Right.
stay in the cage.
Yeah.
So I like that you keep saying, now ask more questions.
Yes.
Ask not just more questions, ask the right questions, or ask the questions in the right way so that you are able to get to the core of what is it that they are grieving about.
So good. So good. So good, Monica. And also, I believe us as friends, family, human beings, we all have our connections, and it's so good to be connected with friends, like have friends you can share this with. Because I know it's uncomfortable sometimes to just share with everybody. So I always encourage my friends to connect with others, connect with like-minded. Find someone you can talk to. Because when you're in a cage, you don't feel like talking to anybody. But if you're connected, you'll open up and be able to share. So that's why with Stronger Life Connections, we created a roadmap that if when people join our group, we go through the roadmap and share. And I don't know, I'm just gonna share. Oh, you can't see it.
We
But
can see.
you can't see it, but it's something I can share with you to share with your group. How
Okay.
the roadmap works is like life happens, you go through that, then there's like you go up and down, and that's what we mean. You go in and out of the cage. But if you have the right connections, and when I say connections, is friends, mentors, coaches,
Mm-hmm.
whoever you interact with or share your story with will help you make one either lower coping coping for like decisions. Now after you've gone through this, you need to make decisions, and that's what we were talking about, something from within. If you have strong connections and friends who can really be there, talk about the elephant in the room, you come out the other side making stronger coping decisions for the future. So good decisions means you're informed, you make your own decisions, you have your values, they're clear, so you come out strong on the other side. If you don't share, you remain in the cage and life goes on and you're in and out, you don't have the connection, you didn't meet Monica, you come out on the other side, no, you don't make so many good decisions. And this, I'm going to share a story what I mean by that. When I was in a cage, I made bad decisions. I did things that were not so good for my health or my brain. I ended up with bad friends. I did things that were not good. And then I started making better connections, and my choices started changing, which now made me make stronger decisions for coping in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I coped with my family, the accident we had with the family, and my recent loss of my sister, the decisions are totally different. Maybe then I could have started, let's say, just an example, I would maybe drink too much. But this time I was like, no, maybe not drink too much. I'm going to talk to a coach. I'm going to talk to my mentor and express how I'm feeling and share my fears and my stories. And this helped me heal. And another good decision I made is coming to your show. I just had a recent loss, but I'm sharing my story. I would have never done this before.
Right.
I would have crumbled, kept quiet in my show, and I would have just been sad and maybe have a drink. Just joking.
I like
that's what I
like that. I like that you mentioned drinking, because I think a lot of people through grief, they start to drink to numb the pain. But what they don't realize is it's not doing them any good, because alcohol is a depressant. And so it will keep them depressed. And then they'll continue drinking to continue numbing the pain. And so they end up with more serious problems. But before I don't want to miss the opportunity to ask you about your book that you just published. What is it about, and what is your aim of publishing a book which says when flowers are not enough?
Thank you, Monica. Thank you. And just to clarify, drinking is just one of the bad choices. The other bad thing, we could talk prescription, we can talk about so many, anything to numb the pain is not a really good decision. So I hope that helps. But thank you so much for mentioning about when flowers aren't enough. I am so thankful for this book. It has been a dream that come true. And why did I do this? Why did we write this book? The reason we wrote the book, When Flowers Aren't Enough, it takes me back to when I lost my relatives. And then I lost my dad. Then I lost my fiance. And then I lost all those losses. I had all these questions. Personally, yes, I help people at the funeral home. We do the work. But when they leave, I'll still have those questions. What do they do when they leave the funeral home? So the book is a resource of when they, after the funeral, because grief starts after the funeral. That's one thing that, I'm sure most people who have experienced grief, they realize when everybody is gone, that's when grief starts. And so this book, it's a handy book that when everybody is gone, you have something, you have some practical tools to guide you. And there's pages to journal and their thoughts. And even on that book, I've shared my stories, what I went through. Because I'll tell you, sometimes when you're grieving, you feel like you're going crazy. But when you hear someone else's story that they also thought like that, it's like, okay, this is part of it. So it's a practical book after the funeral. Mm-hmm. But another point is, it's also a book that you can gift a friend who is going through grief. And that's why the title, When Flowers Aren't Enough. Most times we give flowers, we give this, but if you can give them practical tools that they can go through. But the most exciting, we have a few pages there on the book that says what to say and not to say to someone who is grieving. How many of us have said something and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that? And I'm going to give you examples because I've had a lot. For example, you'd hear someone saying, let's say you just lost your mom and she was unwell. And she said, oh, it's a blessing that the suffering is over. No. Like the person who is receiving that, it's not good. And so sometimes you hear stories like that and people opt not to say anything. So in this book, it tells you what to say and what not to say.
So the common one is, oh, they are in a better place now.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
So what would be better than not having them around you?
Right.
But, most people say it, but the family has lost someone.
Right. And that does not help with the healing.
Mm.
So do you think that person that you just told that will come and open up and talk about the elephant? No, they won't. Like I've heard people say, oh, time will heal. If someone told me time will heal, then I'm supposed to talk to them about the elephant in the room. I wouldn't be saying anything. So that's how we build the wall of silence when people say things that they shouldn't. But again, it's because they don't know. We don't know. We don't know what to say, what not to say. So we avoid to say anything.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't know what to say in this. That's why we end up putting our foot in it.
Right.
So saying the wrong thing, and then after that, the whole situation becomes awkward.
Right.
And yeah, after that, it's difficult to even communicate going forward.
I know. Like when I lost my fiancé, I say, "Oh, you're young. You'll be able to make a new life for yourself."
Oh my goodness.
So I'm like, yeah, logically there's some truth, but at that time, that was it. I'm not talking to you again. I shut down. So next time you see me and say, "How are you doing?" I'm okay. I'm good. So this book, I'm so excited because we have like a few pages about that. But not only what not to say, but we tell you we've put some thoughts on how to say it. And so we are so excited that friends, families, they can gift this book. They can use this book for their own or give it to a friend.
Okay, we are going to put the link here in the comments, so that those who want to access the book, I think there isn't any better time to get this book than now, because of the losses that we are experiencing all around us these days. People don't know what to do after they have lost someone. They need some resources, and it's important, because after everybody else has disappeared and after everybody else is gone, and it's just you remaining, where do you start?
Right.
What do you do? Who do you talk to?
Right.
And how do you talk to them?
Right.
That's really important.
Yeah, Monica, I have to share another one. This is so common, and this is common. I'm not no judgment or anything, but this one that lots of people like to share, that God never gives you more than we can handle.
Mm.
God never gives us more than we can handle, and if we tell someone that, ouch.
Whoever came up with that.
Then God needs them more than you do. Like we have a list of lots of those lists, and we want to share with the world so that we can talk about the elephant in the room. That's the key, because when we talk about the elephant, we create healing and we get more connection with each other, and that's what we need as human beings. We need to be heard.
That is true. We have Farai here saying, when someone is going through grief, let them talk and not you. I like what that you said, listen. So let them talk, just listen. And don't worry about saying the right thing, because we know that you don't know what to say to us.
Mm-hmm.
Besides, there is no perfect way of talking to the grieving.
Mm-hmm.
That is powerful.
That is so powerful. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Listening is everything.
I appreciate that Farai here is, bringing in her own perspective and and sharing about.
Right.
It also helps people to understand, and maybe also make us not walk on eggshells too much.
Yeah. Let's talk about the elephant.
And talk about the elephant. That is true. So where can, is this book on Amazon?
It's coming to Amazon right now. It's on ebook, and
Okay.
very soon it will be. We're gonna share with the world. It's a gift from us. It's a gift from me to the world,
To the
because I
world.
think it's
I
we need
think
we need
mhm.
we need it.
I think you have traveled an amazing, there you go. You don't know which word to use. An amazing journey, but you're talking about grief. You will forgive me. But you know what I am trying to say, or what I am saying is, with the journey that you have traveled, the challenges that you have faced, um, you have managed to understand pain, and now using the pain, I was counting, and so just looking at the closest people who passed in a short space of time for you, it came to about 15. That's a huge number, and I'm sure there were others who were kind of close,
Mm-hmm.
but in a short space of time. But to look at that grief now and say, what do I do with this that has been handed to me?
Mm-hmm.
How do I then turn it around
Mm-hmm.
and use it as a tool, not just to heal others,
Mm-hmm.
but to heal myself so that I'm able to live on purpose
Mm-hmm.
and in purpose and help others? I think that's really amazing, Jennifer, because it's difficult to imagine how most people are able to get up from that
Mm-hmm.
and walk again,
Mm-hmm.
because this thing really dismembers you invisibly,
Mm-hmm.
that you just feel, I can't walk, I can't do this, I really cannot cope. There's a comment here by Annette. After my brother's murder, a co-worker said, you shouldn't be so upset. He was only your brother. Oh my God. Yeah, she says, I was livid by the comment. I found out she was an only child and had no idea what it was like to have a sibling. That was, yeah, it is important really to have this awareness, and
Mm-hmm.
for people to know that if you don't have anything to say, just hug the person,
Yeah.
just hug them,
Yeah.
hug them tight. Don't say anything. They will feel your heart when
Mm-hmm.
you hold them tight. And to say, I'm here for you. I can see you. I feel your pain. And that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
So Annette also said, Jennifer truly has the right to speak about grief. Yes, you do, girl. She has walked through grief herself, but also she helps others. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so earlier on, we talked about, certainly for us,
Yeah.
from when we were young, we didn't talk about, kids were not allowed. We were not allowed to go to the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
We were not allowed. So many of our family members died,
Mm-hmm.
and we were left at home when everybody else went to attend the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Such that for us, for me certainly, funerals were this scary thing that, when it happens, and sometimes if they would say somebody has died, I'll be too afraid to walk in the dark, because I'll think I might see them or something, because there was too much of a mystery put upon it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think it is important. With your experience, I don't know what it was like back home and what it is like here. How do people communicate that to children when there is loss, to help them understand that death is part of life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, Monica. Truly, every culture grieves very differently, as we know. Even within Canada, there are different cultures that grieve differently. So, just talking about Kenya or Zimbabwe in Africa, um, yes, they didn't share about because there's a lot of superstition that comes with death, and people are scared, and it's something dark. Okay, so that's there, and I think it's changing, but we didn't do it here. We avoid it. We don't talk about it. But again, why don't we talk about it? Because it's painful. It's not that because it's bad. It's painful. That's what we were talking about, the wall of silence we create. It's not, we know it's there, but it's too painful to talk about. I think that's how we deal with it. Here, from my experience, it depends. It has to be age appropriate. Where it's really, really important to talk to kids about life and death, but it has to be age appropriate, and that's what I've seen in Canada. They educate, they talk, and it's not secret, it's not something bad, and that's how they learn from. If a rabbit dies or from animals, they're told this is life, and this life of a dog is gone, and they grieve. So because it's life, when it comes to a loved one, then the kids kind of, nobody's ever prepared, but there is that awareness. It's not something bad. It's a life process. It's life. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So when you say age appropriate, what age is appropriate to?
Monica, really?
I'm not leaving any. I'm not leaving any stone unturned. Yeah,
no, that's good. I have to leave that. I guess it's a parent's discretion, because you can meet a 10-year-old who knows a lot of things, right? Like who has an understanding, or meet a 14-year-old who, it just depends. It's parents' discretion. Like I've seen from 8-year-old, 6-year-old coming to a funeral to 10-year-old who can't come to a funeral. So it's up to the parents for sure. There's no right or wrong.
Thank you. So you have 2 minutes before we come to it. You have 2 minutes to tell us what some teasers, whatever you want, or an advice that you can give to people to say, hey, this is how you look after yourself, or this is how you look after your loved one.
I love that, because I love to focus on the live. Like, I will leave you with this every day. Just ask yourself, you need to describe your ideal self. And how do you do that? You need to describe your ideal self. So I'll give you an example, because I like to tell stories so that you can relate. So for me, my ideal self, I like to be present, joyful, and kind. So I practice those 3 things. It is not easy to be joyful every day. So how do you remember your ideal self? I put an alarm on my phone and it comes up 3 times a day. Jennifer, remember to be present, joyful, and kind. And that's how you create your ideal self. So everybody has an ideal self they want to be. Just pick 3 words, put an alarm on your phone, and let's be the best people we can be. Because if we are the best we can be, we are able to serve others and be able to have those hard conversations. Because if you're not, it's like putting your own oxygen mask first. For us to be able to discuss the elephant in the room, we better be our ideal self, where we can be present.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for watching our program, Salve TV, with your host, Monica Kunzekweguta, and Jennifer Thom, who has been sharing about facing loss head on. If you have benefited from this video, could you share it? And it might also help some of your friends and family members understand a bit more about grief. We are in going through this journey together. It might be different from one person to the other, what we are losing, but nonetheless, we are losing something. We have lost something. We can't meet up, we can't hug, we can't socialize, and we are grieving that in so many ways. And here's the thing, we don't even know how long it's going to be until we meet again, until we hug again, until we travel again. Everyone where they are sitting, they are worried because they don't want to receive the bad news. And so what we can do is to look for the three words that Jennifer mentioned. It is also important that we focus on looking for ways to stay connected so that we don't lose ourselves as we are losing everything else. Just make sure you don't lose yourself as well in the process. Make an effort to be present. Be intentional. Pick up the phone. Call someone. Call that person who's normally quiet. Understand your friend's strength and your weaknesses, and go and support those who are weaker than you. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.